and welcome to our second episode of Factoring Polynomials. Today we're going to talk about our first strategy for factoring trinomials. This trinomial is going to be a special case though, where we have our leading coefficient 1. So as you can see here, we have x squared plus bx plus c, where our leading coefficient, there is nothing there, but truly there is a 1 there. So let's take a look how we're going to handle this. Well, first off, we need to come up with two numbers, and they have to satisfy two things. First, they have to multiply to give you 18 and add up to give you negative 9. So here's a multiply number, here's an add number. What I like to do is make a little chart off on the side, although this isn't exactly necessary. What it does do is it allows us to organize things. So I can come up with two numbers that multiply to give you 18 really quickly, 9 and 2, but they add up to 11. So let's step back for a moment before we jump into some others. We need something that multiplies to give us positive 18, but adds up to give you negative 9. Well, if it multiplies to give you positive, they have to be the same sign numbers, both positive, both negative. But because it adds up to give you a negative, both numbers have to be negative. So if I put a negative here and a negative here, it does solve one problem. We have a negative 11, but we want negative 9. So if a little bit more practice, we'll find that if I use negative 6 and negative 3, that does in fact satisfy multiplying to give you 18 and adding up to give you negative 9. The rest from here is pretty quick. We need two groups. 1, 2. And we put our variable first, but not k squared, we put k. Because in order to get that k squared there, we have to multiply k times k when we FOIL out. And then we take our two numbers right here, negative 6 and negative 3, and we plug those in. So k minus 6 and k minus 3. It truly doesn't matter which of these comes first because multiplication is commutative. So we could have written k minus 3 times k minus 6. Make sure you have parentheses around these. But this is our answer. This is what we call our simple case of factoring trinomials. Next case, oops, do you notice there's a 2 in front? Well, we said that there was going to be a 1 in front. But one of the things we always want to look for is there a GCF? Now, if you remember what we did in the last video, we looked for saying what divides into all these numbers. And it turns out 2 does. So I'm going to factor the 2 out and divide each of these by 2. 2x squared divided by 2 is x squared. Minus 20x divided by 2 is 10x. And 48 divided by 2 is positive 24. Now if you notice, our leading coefficient here is 1. So we don't forget this 2 here. I always like to circle it and then say, bring it down here as part of our answer. Now focus your attention just on x squared minus 10x plus 24. And we'll start off with our chart over here. We need two numbers that multiply to give us 24, but add up to give us negative 10. Again, because we're multiplying to give a positive but add up giving negative, both numbers have to be negative. And what two numbers will work? Negative 6 and negative 4. Always make sure they actually do multiply to give you this. Because a lot of times I'll see people put a positive or a 2 positive or a positive and negative, and they don't actually check the multiplication out. But this does multiply to give you positive 24, and it does add up to give you negative 10. So we come back here, make our two groups. What comes first? Well, what two things multiply to give you x squared? X and x. And then we take our two numbers and fill in. Minus 6 and minus 4. So don't forget, we have to include this with our final answer. So our GCF is 2 times x minus 6 times x minus 4. And that is our factoring of this simple trinomial. Hopefully that'll help you out when you move on to some of the other strategies.